This is pricing and package design for wedding and portrait photographers. We're going to talk about pricing for maximum profit. During this, I would love to hear your guys' questions, your thoughts. What are the areas that you guys are struggling with, having challenges with? And I'm going to address as much of those as I can while we go through the topic for today. So I have your guys' comments pulled up. Feel free to chime in, tell me what you're thinking, and let's start from the top. So the first topic that I actually wanted to discuss when it comes to pricing is setting your MVP, the pricing and the design of the MVP. Now the MVP, you probably know this term, it's the minimum viable product. And in fact, what I'm going to do is actually switch this so you can see. Okay, there we go. So you see on my screen, this is, by the way, the link that we're working with. And I also published that link within the description as well of the Facebook post, okay? So this will have kind of an overview of the content that we're talking about. And if you are a premium member, this is actually a small section of the Workshop 3. So in the business series, Workshop 3 is all about pricing, package design, like optimal, everything. So what we're talking about first is the minimum viable product. One of the biggest mistakes, and I'll talk about why we do this in just a second. We set up typically like a 3-package system. At least most photographers will use this. And this is a good practice. But the problem that we first run into is the MVP. The MVP is the lowest product on this list, right? And what we often think of doing is we design the MVP so it's almost like you have to upgrade. It's almost like we really can't get to any sort of optimal solution. If we're a wedding photographer, we might design the MVP to have 4 hours of coverage. But you know that you're generally going to need more than 4 hours of coverage, at least for typical wedding photography, non-elopement type stuff. And so let's say you know that they're going to want an engagement session, but you say that it's an engagement credit. You know that they're going to want, you basically build the package so that it has to be upgraded. This creates a really frustrating experience from the client's perspective, because what they're looking at is like your minimum viable product really isn't a minimum viable product. It's really a product designed to upsell them. And if you want to relate this to kind of a different experience, it would be like, I don't know, let's say that you go into a dealership and you want to buy a car. Even the most basic car comes with the steering wheel. It comes with the, wheels, the rims, the seat belt, the seats. It comes with the basics that you're not going to need. The salesperson's not going to go, okay, you want this car? Well, would you like to, leave with wheels on the car? And you're like, well, yeah, duh, of course I do. So the minimum viable product is saying that you should design this to be something that you're proud of, a product that is complete in and of itself. It's just the minimum. It's the smallest product that is complete in and of itself. But don't design it where you essentially say to clients, oh, you're really going to want to upgrade your hours. You're really going to want to do this because it's not enough. That creates a very negative experience. Okay, and as we go through this, again, if you guys have questions, you guys have thoughts, I want you guys to chime in. Eric says I'll do it for cheaper photographer. That's the opposite of our goal and our intentions. What's up, Daryl, tuning in from BC. I used to live in Victoria, or not Victoria, I used to live in Vancouver, BC, but I visited Victoria. Okay, so starting with the minimum, you want the MVP to be something that you love. The next thing is that you have this middle package. Package 2 is typically like the package that most of your clients are going to actually buy. This is the desired sell, if you will. So what we want to do in package 2 is we want to design it to be a good fit for what your typical client would actually purchase. Meaning we don't want to stick things in there that, clients often remove, because then it just creates problems in terms of like pricing. And then we have the third. So the third package is what we call like a price anchor. There's a saying that kind of goes like, the best way to sell $1,000 purse is to put it next to a $10,000 watch. And there's a lot of truth to it, because in and of itself, $1,000 purse, it sounds expensive. Most certainly it is expensive. Well, until you put it next to a $10,000 watch, and then that $10,000 watch acts like a psychological price anchor where you're like, man, that watch is expensive. Oh, the purse is actually kind of more affordable, right? In reality, it's not. $1,000 purse is not affordable at all. It's just in relation to something more expensive, it does become a more affordable option. And so that's what we're looking at in terms of a 3-tier pricing structure. The nice part about a pricing structure like this, or a 3-tier structure, is that your MVP is really designed to capture clients that have like the baseline budget. Like they have just enough, they can afford your services, they can get something good for that. So it's to give them like a starting point, right? Your package 2 is where the majority of your clients are going to spend. They're going to buy that package. And then the package 3 becomes the price anchor that makes package 2 seem like the best option for everybody. And this is where we usually say, like on a website, you would say prices starting at, and that would be your MVP pricing. So prices starting at $2,000. And then you'd say typical clients spend $5,000. So that's your package 2, right? And that's all we'll typically say that you want to put on your website. You don't generally want to really give, you want to put that on there just to qualify. But when it comes to really discussing pricing and actually closing a sale, we want you to actually get on the phone. We want you to get on the phone. We want you to get into a meeting. We want you to get in person, whatever you need to be. But we need to be in those places to be able to actually convey value and be able to actually design a product that suits our clients' needs and their values. So from that design standpoint, I want you to think of that though. MVP, desired sell, and then price anchor. I'm going to check over here and see if there's any questions or anything like that right now. So Greg said, I'm worried pricing is the first thing people look at and judge me based on before ever getting to talk to them. Also, coffee in Boston. Awesome. Okay, so coffee in Boston. That sounds fantastic. It sounds like a movie. That should be a movie. Yeah, so that's why, Greg, going back to like what you put on your website, right? That's why on a website, we just say, qualify them, say prices starting at, typical client spend, that's it. The rest of you shouldn't really be, there are exceptions to this, of course, but for the vast majority of us, we shouldn't be just listing price lists on a website without ever talking to somebody. And it has nothing to do with like deception, right? It has to do with your audience's education and understanding of what it is that you do. See, most clients, they really don't have any idea between one photographer versus the next. All they do is they look at pictures. And if they're like, oh, photographer A's pictures are good and photographer B's pictures are good, then I'm just going to compare against what I can differentiate, because they're not skilled or trained enough to really differentiate along those lines, right? So then they go to price, because price is the next easy thing to differentiate. And so we say, put the starting at and put the typical spend on the site, because you do want to qualify. If your prices start at $3,000 and somebody wants to pay $500, you really don't want to waste your time or their time by having them call you and go through the whole process. So that's designed to just kind of weed them out and to say this is our typical. But you want to get them on the phone. You want to get them into an in-person session or even a Zoom session or something, because that's your opportunity to actually educate them, to talk about what it is that they value, to talk about, to go through the process of the wave and to talk about what makes you different as a photographer and how you approach their wedding day or their portrait session, and then design something that suits them. Then you present them with the price. So it has nothing to do with deception. It has to do with the fact that when you're dealing with clients in a space where their education, their knowledge is limited, they can't really make a good decision by just comparing price alone. So the goal is, don't let them make a decision based on price when you know that there's a lot of other factors that they need to take into consideration. That's the point of getting them onto a call. Okay, let's go to Armin says, do I need to share my prices on my site? I think we just covered that right there. I worry I might be, okay, so Kenneth, you're starting to get into the next piece of this, and I think that's perfect. Let's go ahead and I'm going to save the other questions as we go, because everyone's probably going to have more. So let's go to the next piece. Let's actually look at sample wedding packages, because I think most of you are probably wedding photographers. Those of you that are portrait photographers, kind of adapt this over to whatever it is that you're offering, right? But when you look at this, sample wedding packages, when we look at the minimum viable product, the MVP, what I might put in there is like a 1-hour engagement session, a 6-hour wedding day. And I'm putting that in there knowing that, okay, with a 1-hour engagement session, I can do what I want to do to deliver an MVP. It's not my ideal. My ideal is like 2 or maybe 3 hours, but I can do what I need to do. It's not 15 minutes. It's not show up and I'll take 10 minutes of pictures and then you guys head out. And same thing with the wedding day. It's not 2 hours of coverage or 4 hours of coverage. It's 6. So I might say like half day wedding coverage or 6 hours wedding coverage. And I might tell them like, based on a very minimal timeline, this is great for elopements. This is great for, small intimate gatherings, and this works. It also has the high resolution images in it because that's typically what everybody's going to ask for. And it might have like, I might do a lead plus second shooter or just a lead shooter. This really is up to you. And then I build in like, let's say a $500 album credit. I'm only going to put like an album credit generally in the lowest packages. The reason why is as soon as you put an album credit in like a higher package, it's the first thing that people try to remove. So usually in package 2, if I want to sell an album, I'm building the album into that package. I'm not putting in a credit because people are going to always ask like, can I remove the credit from that package? So when I go to package 2, what I want to sell, and for me, this is kind of different now. My desired sell is a 3-hour engagement. It's 10 hours of wedding day coverage. It's a lead and second shooter as well as a third. It's full resolution images plus the signature wedding album. So that's really my desired sell at this point. You're going to build what you would ideally want in a package. Like if you want your client to walk away with an album, that needs to be built in. In fact, some people might even say like if you want people to have an album, you build it directly into the MVP so that in none of the packages could you possibly remove that. I would say that this is a good business practice for those of you that are more established, right? If you're more established and you really want to kind of set the tone for what you want to deliver, great. But if you're less established and you want your MVP to pick up on lower budgets because you need that work, then take the album out, build in a credit on that point so that you can bring the price down a bit and pick up more work on that side. There is no one size fits all what is the right type of pricing for everybody. It's very much going to matter based on what it is that you want to do. And going back to that point earlier of like, should you put your prices on your website? Well, for the vast majority of you, no, like beyond the starting at and beyond what clients typically spend. But there are even exceptions to this rule, right? I have a friend, Jared Gant. A lot of you guys know Jared. He does incredible work. And photography is like, he's an amazing business person. And wedding photography it provides more than a full-time income, but he does it basically part-time as he works on other businesses. So for him, he's generating so many leads and so much traffic going to the website that he actually posts all the details and you can book him directly right from the website, right? And that's not optimal in the sense of like, well, are you going to be converting every single, like your percentage of conversion from views to actually converting a sale, it's going to be pretty low, right? Because you're not getting them on the phone, you're not doing in-person meetings, you're not doing any of those things. But if you've got a large number of leads and your business is established and you're down the road and you want to minimize the time you're spending in those areas, then absolutely that totally works because he doesn't need, if he's got 1,000 people on the website each month and he only needs, let's say 1 or 2 bookings, then why worry about it, right? It doesn't matter that conversion. But that's not 99% of you. 99% of you are not, 10 years into your business and getting thousands of people on the website every month and having tons of leads that you don't know what to do with. That's not the majority of us. And that's why we say for the majority, you want to get people onto the phone. You want to get them on a Zoom session. You want to get them in person because that's where your conversion rates go up dramatically. That's where you're, instead of converting 1% of your audience, you're going to be converting 20, 30%. If you get them on a call, you're very likely to be booking them. Okay. So I think we covered that side. So there's kind of exceptions, I guess. And that's what I'm getting at is there's exceptions to every one of these rules, but by and large, that's one of them that we kind of stick to is like, just put the starting at and put the clients typically spend, and that's it when it comes to the website. The rest of it, you're going to be on the phone. And the other reason too that you want to do this in person or on the phone is you like as a salesperson, I think a lot of photographers, they really hate the sales process. And the reason why is that we have this mentality that sales is, the used car salesperson selling us something that we don't want. That's our idea of sales, right? But that's not sales. Selling someone something that they don't want is literally manipulation. That has nothing to do with sales. It's why someone walks away and they start to, regret the decision. They start to have post-buyer remorse, whatever it might be, and they start thinking like, should I return this? I don't feel good about that experience. We don't want any of that. We don't want that resentment to reside. So what we're talking about in the sales process, sales when it's done well it's a value added service in and of itself. And this is what we really focus on throughout our entire programs in business education, is getting photographers to understand that when you do sales right, it doesn't feel like sales. In fact, from the client's perspective, it's part of your service. It's a value added service because you're helping them to find what they want. But sales done right starts with understanding what they value and then presenting a solution for that value. To do that, you need to have that in-person interaction. You need to have them on the phone, right? You need to have them like in face-to-face, whatever it might be. And then once they tell you the things they value, you've completed the wave with them, that's when you're going to make a value proposition. You're going to say, you know what, for what you guys need, I would honestly suggest package 3. But you're not suggesting package 3 because it's the most expensive. You're suggesting package 3 because you genuinely feel that it's the ideal package based on what they need or what they value. If they present you, well, we're just doing an elopement and we're just doing this and we'd like to have an album one day, but right now we don't have it in the budget. Then you present, I think what's best for you all is the MVP. And it's not called that, of course. You're going to give it a nice name. But you present them with that minimum package because that's what is right for them. See, sales when done right, it's you acting as an advocate for your clients. It's you presenting what you think is the right solution based on what they value. It's not what you want to be selling, right? Okay. I mean, it is what you want to be selling, but it's what you want to be selling, prioritizing their needs, their values over yours. Okay. So when it comes to the actual design, package 3, one of the biggest mistakes that people make with package 3 is they just build in a bunch of crap that nobody wants, right? Like they might put in like multiple coffee table albums and, $1,000 worth of prints and all these things that nobody really wants. And they're like, well, those are the first things I'm going to remove. So when you build package 3, you need to make sure that like what it actually is are things that people actually want, right? So maybe it's the 3-hour engagement session. Maybe it's 12 hours of wedding day coverage or 10 hours of wedding day coverage or whatever it might be. Maybe it's the signature wedding album and then 2 duplicate parent albums for each side because you know that this is something that they desire, at least that the majority of clients would want, right? But keep in mind, the more of these products that you build in, the more opportunities there are to say, well, I actually only want 1 parent album, or can we do no parent albums? And they're going to basically try to remove things. So build package 3 to be things that people actually want, not things that they're going to take out of it to try and get the price lower. Because then you're going to run into these kind of like issues where they're going to book package 3, remove the 2 parent albums, and suddenly it's actually cheaper than package 2. And you're like, oh, how did that happen? So don't run into that kind of stuff. Okay. One of the other things that I want to discuss is as you name the packages, make sure that you give them names that are distinctly neutral, but also they sound luxurious, right? We're selling a luxury product. You don't want to name your packages something like bronze because nobody wants bronze. Everybody knows bronze is 3rd place. Don't name it like, don't name it 3rd. Don't name it anything that could be perceived as being lower, like on a pedestal. So gold would be good, platinum would be good, diamond would be good. All 3 of those things are good, right? You can stratify them, but I'd be happy with gold. I'd be happy with platinum. I'd be happy with diamonds. It doesn't matter. I'm happy with all of those things. So when it comes to the naming of them, don't give them distinctly, kind of less valuable names. The next thing I wanted to say is watch your price jumps. So usually we look for like a 50 to 100% price jump between packages. So from package 1 to package 2, it makes sense to go from, let's say, 2,000 to maybe 3,000, 4,000. But once you start getting to like 5,000 or 6,000, that's way too big of a jump. And the problem with this is that, well, I'll tell you in just a second. When you go to package 3, that's where you can do a significant price jump, maybe like 100% or like double, basically. Don't go from like 3,000 to, 9,000, but 3,000 to 6,000 would make sense. We want to keep those jumps kind of stratified. And the reason why is, well, you're going to kind of typically, let's say that you sell the majority of your packages are package 2s, right? Well, the audience, the clients that are at these weddings are very likely going to be able to book package 3 as well. They're kind of the same clients that could probably fall into that. When you book package 1, let's say you're booking quite a few of those because you're just starting out, and then you build package 2 to be 2 or 3 times more than package 1, the audience at the weddings that you're photographing are very unlikely to be able to make the jump to a package 2, and let alone like a package 3. So when you stratify too much in those jumps, then you start to basically kind of pluck people out of your audience that can afford your services too quickly. So what we like to do is whenever we're doing price increases, so we try to keep the package stratification around 50 to 100% jumps. And then what we try to do is if we're going to make a pricing adjustment, we go across the board in smaller increments. And you might do it more often. Might be a 10% increment, a 15% increment. Maybe you do it, 1 year, you're starting to boom. So you do that price adjustment twice during the year. That's fine. Do that based on the demand and based on, the supply of what you want to be shooting. But don't make huge jumps where you're like, tomorrow I'm just going to be double the price. Because then a lot of the clients and their networks of people that could afford you before aren't going to be able to now. And you essentially eliminate the entire network of people that you've already served. Okay. I think that gives you guys a lot of stuff to kind of start with. What I want to do now is just kind of take a look at what you guys have in terms of questions, and then let you guys actually get started on this. So I'm going to jump back up. If you guys have any questions, any thoughts, anything that you want me to cover right now, go ahead and pop over to the comments. And I'm going to flip this back to just the camera right now. And let's see. Okay. Kenneth said, I worry that I might be offering too much for my MVP as too many people are still asking about that package as opposed to my desired sell. Yeah, so Kenneth, that can often happen where, a lot of people might want the MVP. This could happen for kind of a number of reasons, right? Number one, it could be because, yes, you're right, that you've put maybe too much into that package. You've designed it to basically be everything that somebody would want. The other thing is that package might be everything that somebody would want based on who you're currently advertising with, who you're currently marketing to, who your current audience is. Meaning like the way that you're actually presenting the message and the type of people that are coming in, that is what they want. It's not necessarily, what everybody would want. It's just what's suited to the audience that you might have developed as well. So I'd kind of want to look on both sides of that and to see like, could this be who I'm, attracting in terms of my audience, in terms of the network of people that I have in it? Or could it be because I've maybe designed package one, my MVP to be too much? It might be a combination. Thomas said, there's so much differing info on the subject. How many packages are too many? In boudoir, the common practice is to have a 10K package all the way down to 1K, but 8 packages within that range. Thomas, I don't want to say like what is ideal across the board. We obviously don't do we don't sell boudoir packages. That's not our focus. I do want to say like from just a client's perspective, if you give me 8 packages or 6 packages or 7 packages, you're increasing, friction in this process. What we often say is like when we want to design, at least within our business education, we try to help photographers design something that's going to maximize profits, but also deliver a really great experience. And part of that client experience, part of developing a really good process is reducing customer friction across the board. When you introduce 8 packages or 7 or 6 or even 5, it starts to become very complicated. Like making the decision between one versus another, it's quite extensive. And you would definitely need hand-holding. You definitely need a lot of help. And honestly, I don't know why it would be beneficial. That being said, our focus isn't boudoir. And so I don't know. I just, in my head, I can't see that being a good practice anywhere. And I don't really see that anywhere, right? Like if you go to buy a car, there's generally they're not gonna hand you 8 different versions of that car with, whatever it might be. There might be 8 different versions of it, but the salesperson is probably going to say, this is what, you love during the test drive, and this is within your budget. Pick between the two, right? They're going to reduce the number of choices, even though they might have multiple. So that would be kind of something that I would think about is just, not increasing friction so much that you have all these different prices and packages going on. Okay, let's see here. Okay, we got that. We got Thomas's question. Brandon said, one of the things I'm really worried about when it comes to pricing is belief that I'm worth the price tag I'm charging, which extends to larger struggle of knowing if my work produces professional or looks good. Okay, any suggestions? So Brandon, what you're talking about is imposter syndrome, right? Imposter syndrome is a very real thing. Half of my work now is in the psychology space. And so we deal with people that have imposter syndrome across the board. I would say that, me, myself, I have imposter syndrome regardless of the level of accomplishments that you might have. So with imposter syndrome, I usually say this from like a psychological, like coaching standpoint. I would say divide imposter syndrome into two categories. There's one category, which is the practical side of imposter syndrome, the realistic side. You might feel imposter syndrome because you haven't been able to justify a certain price point yet. You haven't, received recognition yet. You're new. You're not established yet, right? Maybe if we were looking at a different space, like let's say we were looking at, I don't know, a space where there's certifications, where there's licensing, right? Maybe you lack a certain certification, and that's making you feel like you have imposter syndrome. Well, that piece of it is the practical side. It's the side of like, okay, well, I do need to maybe go and get a certification. I do need to gain some experience. I do need to start booking more. I do need to do those things. And when you address that, it relieves kind of the practical piece of that imposter syndrome. So from that side, I would say imposter syndrome is a good thing. It kind of lets you know that like, these things that I lack are things that I could potentially work on. It's yourself being self-aware and saying, hey, these are potential weaknesses that I can address. But then there's the second side. So if there's a second side of imposter syndrome, it would be, well, despite what you've accomplished, despite what you've done, there's this internal negative belief set of like, I'm not good enough. I just don't believe in myself. And you could have all the accolades, you could have all the certifications, you could have the pedigree, you could have the work, the clients, the reviews. This comes down to like at my core, I just don't believe that I'm enough. Now that's the piece of imposter syndrome that we say you need to recognize and differentiate. If you're in that place where it's like, well, I have been getting awards and my clients do love my service and I'm booking really great jobs and I've been doing this professionally for years and all these things, but I still feel this way, then we'd say we need to look internally to see why. Why is it that you still feel like you're not enough? And usually that comes to like inner trauma. That comes to like negative past experiences that we're still holding on to, right? But if it's the former, if it's the fact that, well, yeah, you haven't really booked packages at that higher rate, you haven't really justified it with the work yet, you don't have the clients, then that's actually pretty easy to remedy, right? What we might do for now is, well, bring your price point down a little bit, get people coming into the door, get people booking you, get your schedule busy, and then start slowly raising your rates. And then as you raise those rates, you're like, man, now I've got 20, 30, 40 people booking me at this rate, and I can justify another price increase. And you keep building on it, and that's how you build through the practical side of that belief, okay? But I don't believe in like a lot of coaches, especially in the photography space, a lot of people will just say, you just got to believe that you're worth the amount, the price. I don't think that's helpful. And I don't think it's true either. Like if you're new into photography and someone's telling you, you just got to believe that you're worth the $10,000. Maybe you trick somebody into paying you $10,000. You get one client that does that. Okay. You're not a $10,000 photographer. You're a photographer that got one $10,000 client, right? You're a $10,000 photographer per booking when every one of your clients are seeking that thing. And frankly, to tell somebody to believe that they're worth a certain amount when the market doesn't justify it, that's doing them a disservice. Because I want you guys to look, you're worth whatever the market is willing to pay for your services, which means that if the market's only willing to pay $1,000 or $1,500, start there. Start there and start building your way up, as opposed to like holding out for what you're worth when in reality, nobody's actually booking you for that thing. So I kind of take a much more pragmatic approach, a much more, frankly, kind of evidence-based scientific approach from my space in psychology, as opposed to like, just believe that you're worth it and hope that someone actually books you for that. And hopefully that makes sense. Let me know if that helps you in kind of like addressing that side or if there's other piece of it, Brandon. So Eric said that they feel that. Shout out to Jared. Yeah, Jared's awesome. I miss my homie. I haven't chatted with him for a while. Okay, so Eric says, what are some of the things that separate the starting at and typical client spend prices? If I list starting at price point, what else am I selling that raises the invoice to the realm of typical client spend? So usually, Eric, it's the additional hours, like the typical, like if I were to design my package 2 right now, it would look very different from this because most of my clients are Indian brides. So given that I'm shooting Indian weddings, my desired sell, my package 2 includes pre-wedding events. It includes 12 to 14 hours of wedding day coverage. It includes like multiple, like 3 different shooters. It includes all this stuff, including multiple albums. So So it can very much be different depending on like what niche you're serving in the space. But the main difference that you'll see between like a minimum and a typical is hours, the number of hours, the number of event days, that kind of stuff, as well as like the number of physical products that are included would differ. So that would be the big pieces. Okay, so Thomas said MVP equals $500 middle package, $1,500. Yes, so MVP, so yeah, you'd say starting at 500, most clients spend 1,500. That would be kind of like how you'd say. And word it in a way where it sounds like not offensive, right? So if you say packages starting at this, my average client spends this, that sounds almost offensive, right? Like my average client, no, you'd say like typical client spend is around this. Okay. And you can do, like Thomas said, you can do the same thing with IPS. If you're doing like session fees, I still feel like the best way to do this is to let your clients know in advance. It doesn't feel good when a client is spending $250 for a portrait session and then they arrive only to find out that they need to spend another $1,500 in your IPS session, right? So if you want to sell more, if you want to not be the used car salesperson, if you want to actually have clients prepared and not be wasting your time, then you might say like sessions start at $250. Clients typically spend $1,500 on albums and prints. So that would give them an idea of what they're going into, right? As opposed to just like being blindsided with an IPS session. Okay. To clarify that many packages is price anchoring in the case of the $10,000 package, but then having easy upgrades from a lower package so the jump in price is small. I see. Yeah, I mean, either way, Thomas, I think going back to that multi-package design thing, I think it creates a lot of friction in terms of like, you create a lot of additional thought. You know, anytime like I'm in a sales process and you give me something, like we talk about this a lot in the sales psychology. In course 4, it's really focused in on sales psychology. One of the big things is like photography as a product is what I would say like a limbic system product. Limbic system is the process of the brain where we're thinking of stories and emotions and all that kind of stuff. When I look at a price sheet, that takes me over to neocortex functioning, like higher brain functioning. And these are two very different things. You could say it's like the logic center of the brain versus the emotional center of the brain, right? And when you put me in the neocortex with questions like about my timeline, about, you know, pricing and packages and which thing is right for you and what do you need, I'm thinking neocortex the whole time. So as soon as you give me a list of 8 packages, that's all I'm thinking is just logic. And you've taken me out of the space of like emotional thinking. And the reason why I'm there is because it's an emotional product, right? If I'm buying photography, it's because I want to preserve my memories. It's because I value these experiences. And yet you're putting me into this logic center. So when that happens, what you often get is a client that says something like, well, I need some time to think about this. Let me review the packages, because they want to spend time to go and do the deep processing and getting into the nuts and bolts of those 8 different packages. And you're basically going to set yourself up for people that walk away. They walk away and they go, I just need time to think about it. As opposed to like a simple package design where you can say, this is what I'd recommend for you. I understand what you value and this is what would fit that. And you've taken all the cognitive load off of me and you've done your job as the salesperson, and you allow me to kind of stay with just the experience of enjoying it, with just the limbic system process of like, I can't wait to actually have this experience, to have my wedding day photograph, to experience those things, to be on a portrait session, to have these memories. So that's the really goal and the process. And that's why I say, like, you know, keeping people away from those deeper neocortex type questions and thought processes. Okay, cool. All right, Brandon, I'm glad. So you said that totally makes sense. I knew I had some form of imposter syndrome. Yeah, so look whether it's like category 1 or category 2, and then start kind of addressing it. Awesome. One nuanced question too, when it comes to adding hours to an existing package, how do you go about doing that? How much should one charge and based on what? So Brandon, we kind of make that process very simple on our side. We just have a standard hourly rate. And when they add to their package, it just goes based on that rate. You do want to check to make sure that like you can't, Like you don't want people to get into a place where they can game your packages, right? Where they look at package one, they go, you know what? If I get package one and just do 2 additional hours of wedding day coverage, that's only $2,400 instead of $3,000. And then you're like, okay, well, now I shot myself in the foot. So you should just test out the packages and make sure that like when you add hours, when you subtract things, that you don't kind of run into issues where you can essentially like game the packages, because clients will. And then again, when they get into that space, that neocortex, like, oh, I'm going to logic my way into a better price, you've taken them away from the whole purpose of why they're there, of the experience of like storytelling and being able to have these important memories preserved and documented. So hopefully this helps, guys. And I want you all to jump in. We spent about 30 minutes on this, a little bit more than that. And I want you guys to jump in now and actually do the work. Put together the package designs. If you guys have questions, post in the community. And if you all want to learn more about everything that we talked about, you want to go through the pricing, the package design, the sales process, the psychology of sales, and how to better sell, well, at the bottom of this page, actually. So if you click the link at the bottom of this, it'll take you over so you can learn more about SR Lounge Premium Education. And that's it for me. I'm about to head off to some more production. Hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll see you all soon. Peace.